Good evening. I'll call to order this special meeting of the Bellevue City Council, 14th, for November 14th, 2019. I'm going to ask the Deputy Mayor to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With us tonight is Councilmember Stokes, Deputy Mayor Robinson, Councilmember Lee, Councilmember Zahn, Councilmember Neuenhaus, and Councilmember Robertson has recused herself from this particular proceeding and made that statement a few weeks ago. This is a Process 1 quasi-judicial proceeding, which the council members are acting as judges. It is a bit different than the way that you see us. So we are scheduled to continue consideration of the appeals of the hearing examiner's decision to approve with conditions Puget Sound Energy's application for conditional use permit for the South Bellevue segment of the Energize Eastside project. We expect to adopt a motion tonight giving direction to the City Attorney's Office to draft an ordinance to be brought back on the December 2nd City Council regular session agenda that incorporates the direction of the council on the appeal and on the project. So before discussing the appeal, I will ask the city attorney to lead us through disclosures for any ex parte contacts.
Thank you, Mayor Chelmanack. As you indicated, this is a Process 1 quasi-judicial proceeding in which the council members are acting as judges. Therefore, this proceeding falls under the provisions of the state's Appearance of Fairness Act. And under that act, council members must place on the record the substance of all ex parte communications with opponents or proponents with respect to the conditional use permit that is before the application that's before the council tonight. Ex parte communications may be in the form of verbal conversations, emails, or other writings, and an announcement of the content of those communications and of the party's right to rebut the substance of the communications must be made at each hearing where action is taken or considered on the CUP application. At the council's October 16, 2019 appeal hearing, I identified 18 emails as potential ex parte communications received by council members between April 8, 2019, when the hearing examiner's hearing closed, and October 16, the date of the appeal hearing. In general, those emails addressed the topics of energy demands and options on the east side of King County. In addition, there were several emails regarding requests to meet with council members about these issues. Copies of those emails were provided to the parties or their representatives on October 15, the day before the council's October 16 appeal hearing. And in addition, at the October 16 appeal hearing, Councilmember Lee disclosed that as a resident of the Somerset neighborhood, he attended the July 4th picnic, and that while some of the appellants were at the event, he did not have any communications with them about the project. Councilmember Zahn also stated that she participated in an editorial board with the Seattle Times on June 13, where a question was raised about the Energize Eastside project, but that she informed the group that she could not discuss the matter. The parties were then provided an opportunity to rebut the substance of any ex parte communication during the October 16 appeal hearing, and no party provided any rebuttal. Since that time, staff have again searched all emails received at the council's email address and at individual council members' city email addresses, and no potential ex parte communications were found during those searches. So tonight, I will ask each council member individually if they have any additional ex parte communications to disclose. You only need to disclose any additional ex parte communications that have occurred other than through those city email accounts and that have occurred since October 16, 2019. And if a council member has any additional ex parte communications to disclose, then you should state on the record the name of the person who you talked to, the date or approximate date of the contact, the method, whether it was written or by phone or by email, and the substance of the communication. The disclosures will be preserved, again, for purposes of maintaining a record of these communications, should there be a need for them in any subsequent legal proceedings, but their substance will not be considered by the council in making its decision. After the council members go through your individual additional ex parte disclosures, I will again ask the parties if any of them wish to rebut or speak in opposition to the substance of any of the potential ex parte communications that have been disclosed. So starting with Councilmember Stokes and just going down the line, Councilmember Stokes, do you have any additional ex parte communications to disclose?
No, I don't.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Robinson, do you have any ex parte communications to disclose?
No, I do not.
All right, thank you. Mayor Chavanek, do you have any?
I do not.
Okay. Councilmember Lee, do you have any additional ex parte communications?
I do not.
Councilmember Zahn, do you have any additional ex parte?
No, I do not.
And Councilmember Neuenhuis, do you have any?
No, I do not.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I will again ask the parties if any party wishes to rebut or oppose the substance of any of the ex parte communications that have been disclosed either at the October 16 hearing and there were no more tonight. So, okay, hearing none, I think that should conclude the disclosure portion of this meeting tonight.
Very much. Proceeding from here, I'm going to provide some opening remarks and also provide a little bit of context again for what the rules are regarding proceedings like this. Then I'm going to launch into what I see as the outcome of having reviewed the record, the testimony, and the hearing examiner. Mr. Lee has specifically asked to also make a comment. So when I am done, he will make a comment, and then that will be afforded the opportunity to other council members for whatever they wish to make. So the first thing I do want to do is I want to thank the parties for the work that you have done on this. Your work has been very, very helpful to us in the way you organized it. I know I can speak for the entire council to say that we're very impressed with the work of legal counsel, the evidence that you presented, and the advocacy that you've made on behalf of your clients. It was excellent. It was very well done. In addition, I hope you'll also, in your offices, extend our thanks from the City Council to all of those in your offices who have worked on this case. This amount of information cannot be compiled without the assistance of many people, and truly we would like you to pass along our thanks to those people. On behalf of the council, I also want to thank our staff. I thanked you a couple of weeks ago, but the work that was done by the city staff to compile all of this documentation, put it in a place that council members could read it, and to be able to make sense of 15,000 pages of information was made much easier by their work. I also want to thank especially the three pro se appellants in this case, Ms. Lopez, Mr. Halverson, and Mr. Hansen. Reading the file in this case reminded me of how much work they have done on behalf of the city of Bellevue to increase the electrical reliability of this city. It goes back a number of years, actually probably over a decade, and I know the council is very appreciative of all of that work, and they have led to, I think it has led to having a city where there is a better electrical reliability, and I just think they are due a major thanks. It's probably the last time I'm going to get the opportunity to thank you publicly. So, so I know that we look the same tonight if you've been at city council meetings, but this is very different. Our role of the council, this is a role the council does not take very often. Tonight, we are not here to make a decision in the first instance of this case about whether the CUP should be issued, but instead we're here to determine whether the hearing examiner's decision is supported by the material and substantial evidence that is in the record. Evidence is material if there is a reasonable probability that the presence or absence of the evidence would alter the decision by the fact finder. Substantial evidence is a sufficient quantity of evidence in the record to persuade a fair-minded and rational person of the truth or correctness of a finding. The appellants bear the burden of proof in these appeals, and counsel may only grant an appeal if the appellants have carried their burden of proof and the counsel finds that the decision is not supported by material and substantial evidence. In making this decision, the counsel is required to give substantial weight to the hearing examiner's decision. So I read the hearing examiner's decision, including the findings of fact and conclusions of law, reviewed the evidence that's in the record, as well as the briefs that were given by the parties. We all have done that. The hearing examiner cited the evidence in the record that supported his findings and conclusions, and I understand that there was opposing evidence on some issues which the hearing examiner weighed in terms of credibility of witnesses and the persuasiveness of the evidence. The counsel, acting in its appellate role in this case, must defer to the hearing examiner's assessment of the weight and credibility of the evidence. Again, the counsel's role is to determine if there is material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision that all of the criteria in the city's land use code necessary to issue a CUP for an electric utility facility has been met, giving substantial weight again to the hearing examiner's decision. We've had the record before us and have had the opportunity to review it and talk to the city attorney about it. We have met as a group to discuss what is in the record, and based on that and based on the positions of, based on my position as the mayor, I'm going to take several minutes now to summarize what I believe is stated by the record and provide you with my conclusions. Based on the record, the expert testimony, the decision of the hearing examiner, and the criteria established, I believe there is material and substantial evidence in the record supporting the hearing examiner's decision that all of the necessary criteria have been met. While the appellants in their notices of appeal challenged a number of the findings and conclusions of the hearing examiner, the parties did not provide briefing on arguments to the council on many of the issues. The parties' briefs and oral argument focused primarily on the issues of need and reliability, visual impacts, and in part some of the testimony on the pipeline. So I am going to focus my comments this evening on those issues, although again, I believe there's material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's findings and conclusions that all of the necessary criteria have been met to issue the CUP. On need and reliability, the relevant decision criteria are that the applicant, which is here PSE, demonstrated that an operational need exists that requires the location of or expansion of the proposed site, and that the proposed electrical utility improves reliability to customers served and reliability of the system as a whole, or as certified by the applicant's licensed engineer. And that's found at our Land Use Code 2020-255 E3 and E4. Call your attention to the record at 84C and 84D in the decision by the hearing examiner, concluded that the two criteria were met. The hearing examiner cited to a number of places in the record where there is evidence supporting these criteria. I would like to point out in particular that there were a number of studies done following 2009. At finding 17, the examiner notes 3 studies by PSE or the City of Bellevue, including the Electrical Reliability Report in 2012, Quanta Needs Assessment in 2013, and Quanta Supplemental Assessment in 2015. Referring to the Quanta studies, the examiner notes, and I quote here, confirmed that if growth in demand continued as projected, the East Side's existing grid would not meet federal reliability requirements by the winter of 2017-18 and the summer of 2018 without addition of 230 kV to 115 kV transformer capacity. At finding 19, the examiner refers to the City of Bellevue's independent study of PSE's report. The examiner writes, more significantly, and enhancing the credibility of the reports submitted by the applicant, the City of Bellevue commissioned a separate study to evaluate PSE's system, which also confirmed the need for the Energize East Side project. He is speaking here in terms of the USE study. At finding 20, the examiner notes PSC informed the city that peak demand had been exceeded in the summer of 2017 and was warned that caps, that is corrective action plans, would be in place for 2018. The examiner notes PSC's witnesses appeared credible and forthright during their testimony. In a letter to the city manager, Mr. Miyake, dated June 8, 2018, Dan Koch, PSC's Director of Electrical Operations, writes, "Our forecasts have long indicated that peak customer demand could exceed capacity as early as the winter of 2017 or the summer of 2018, hence the Energize East Side project. In fact, our peak demand increased faster than modeled, and our actual 2017 summer peak demand exceeded our load forecast for the summer of 2018, 1 year earlier than expected." This letter is found in the DSD staff report at page 4,224 of the record. Appellants argue the data from the studies are too old. Hearing examiner at finding 29 concluded Mr. Nedrud credibly testified that PSC has gone back to review whether deficiencies exist using more current data. He confirmed that PSC analyzed data again in December of 2016, 2017, and 2018, and that the updated data from each time period showed peak demand exceeding system capacity. Much of the argument that we heard was that the applicant failed to demonstrate that an operational need existed in the south segment, or that the siting hierarchy in LUC 2020-255E5B was met because none of the, I believe that was not met, because none of the studies looked at the south segment in isolation. As the hearing examiner points out in paragraph 58B, or finding of fact 58B, the corrective action plan is currently for load shedding or rolling blackouts, including in residential neighborhoods that are located along the route of the south segment. And therefore, there is a need for the project to prevent these problems in the residential areas located along the route. One of the comments raised by the public during the review of the project by DSD and at the hearing before the hearing examiner was, if average usage of electricity is flat or declining, how can there be a need for this project? Conservation has improved the average use of electricity in our growing communities, but it is when the weather turns biting cold or very hot that peak demand takes over. The USE report, independently commissioned by the city, was very instructive on the issue as it related to the NERC codes aimed at stopping escalating blackouts. Based on all of this and other significant evidence in the record, I believe there is material and substantial evidence to support the hearing examiner's decision that PSC demonstrated an operational need exists and that the proposed facility improves reliability. I'll now spend a few minutes on a couple of other issues and then some technical issues. On visual impact, looking at the impacts of properties in the vicinity of a project is important. That's why, well prior to this project even coming forward, the Council incorporated consideration of impacts on those properties in the vicinity of these types of projects in our city code. Key to the impacts is how can the effect of a project be minimized. At finding 35, the hearing examiner found PSC's decision to use the existing corridor minimized tree removal compared to establishing a new corridor. The examiner states, as properties adjacent to the transmission line corridor currently have utility facilities in their view sheds and neighborhoods, the Willow 1 route has lower impacts compared to establishing a new corridor. The hearing examiner discusses mitigation measures at finding 58C, noting that pole design, placements, heights, and wire connections were all analyzed to minimize view impacts while also achieving the project objectives. Significant care was taken to minimize the impacts, particularly in the Somerset neighborhood in the south segment. At pages 32 and 33, which are findings of fact 83B, the examiner further talks at length about how the design is compatible with and responds to the existing or intended character, appearance, quality of development, and physical characteristics of the subject property, and notes the project will not introduce a change in land use, and that a number of site-specific changes have been made in the design to address neighborhood concerns, including considering trees and pole heights. There was public testimony and information in the record regarding the impact of the project such as this on property values. However, the city staff report noted the EIS did not find studies that indicated a negative effect on property values due to the replacement of lower voltage with higher voltage transmission lines in an existing utility corridor. In any event, the studies that were looked at indicated that the effect of a transmission line on sales price of properties diminished over time and would be short-term. Effects of transmission lines on sales prices of property diminish over time and all but disappear in 5 years, was the quote from the study. So I do believe in this case there is material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision on these. Briefly on the pipeline safety, hearing examiner discussed pipeline safety at length from finding of fact 62 through 74, including noting that there are a significant number of pipeline safety related conditions of approval. Hearing examiner relied on the expert testimony of Wolfgang Filch and the final EIS and concluded at finding of fact 74 that the conditions of approval, quote, should serve to enhance and hopefully improve public safety by reducing current risks. Again, I believe there's material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision. There are a few other issues that I'm going to cover. First is segmentation. To the extent the appellant argues that PSC was required to submit one CUP application for both the north and south segments, the land use code does not require that. And as the hearing examiner noted at finding of fact 9 in his decision, he does not have jurisdiction to require that. In the notice of appeal, Sense alleges violation of BCC 2020-255 D4. That's Notice of Appeal, paragraph 2.7. It's not clear this issue was raised before the hearing examiner. Even if it was, the code section only requires the applicant to provide a description of all methods of community outreach or involvement conducted by the applicant prior to selecting a preferred site for the proposed electrical utility facility. It does not mandate PSC apply for both the north and south segment in one application. There has been the hearing examiner's alleged approval of the north segment. The appellants argue that the hearing examiner somehow approved more than the south segment, the South Bellevue segment of the transmission line, and that is simply not the case. The only CUP application before the hearing examiner was for the South Bellevue segment, and his decision makes clear that he is only approving the South Bellevue segment, subject to specific conditions of approval as stated in Section 7 on page 37 of his decision. There are also several issues raised by the appellants that the council does not have jurisdiction to decide. Those are, first, the constitutional due process claims. Second, claims of bias by the hearing examiner. Third, challenges to the adequacy of the SEPA environmental impact statement. A significant number of conditions have been applied to this project, both by Development Services Department and the hearing examiner, and they are contained in the DSD staff report as well as the hearing examiner's final decision. So to summarize, I do not believe the appellants have met their burden of appeal. I find that there is material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision and would vote to deny the appeals. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I took this very seriously. I made my decision independently by poring over the hearing examiner's decision and thousands of pages in 20-plus volumes of testimonies. I came to the conclusion that there's material and substantial evidence to support the hearing examiner's decision that the proposed project complies with electrical utility decision criteria in City's Land Use Code 2020-250E and complies with conditional use decision criteria of 2030B 140. City staff listed in her report concluded that the proposal is consistent with City's comprehensive plan and utility policies, that it meets local demand growth and protect reliability in the east side of King County. The utility policies focus on ensuring reliable, sustainable, and high-quality service for the whole community. Moreover, Ms. Stad also recognized there is tension between the utility's obligation to meeting growing demand and providing reliability, and the comprehensive plan policies to ensure new and expanding utility facilities, and sensitive to neighborhood character. The proposal, as conditioned, balances the policies around neighborhood character, including policies around trees and height limits, with utility policies related to reliability and sustainability. View impact is discussed and mitigated efforts made to minimize the impact, although not eliminated. Property value is examined and found that negative impacts are short-term. On balance, the need of reliable energy for the whole community outweighs impact to some neighborhoods. The proposal may not satisfy everybody, but that is not what we are asked to do. We are asked to decide if the hearing examiner's decision should be upheld based on evidence on record. I find that there's material and substantial evidence to support the hearing examiner's decisions. Therefore, I join the mayor in the denial of the appeal to the hearing examiner's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Mr. Lee. I will just go down the dais and ask council members if they would like to add anything, either in concurrence or in dissent. I'll start with Mr. Stokes.
Yes, I concur that there is material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision, and therefore I agree that the appeal should be denied.
Deputy Mayor Robinson.
After spending a significant amount of time on the very large record, as well as the testimony before the hearing examiner, I concur with Mayor Chalmanek and Councilmember Lee that there is material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision, and therefore I agree that the appeal should be denied.
Mr. Neuenhaus, then Ms. Zahn.
I just want to, again, thank all the parties for their hard work. I know the mayor touched on that already, but really do appreciate all the hard work from all the additional parties involved and all the hard work from my colleagues and the 15,000 pages that we had to go through. And I really appreciate the restating our role in this process as well. The fact that if it was not in the hearing examiner record, it could not be part of our decision-making process. So therefore, I as well concur with the mayor and Councilmember Lee that there is material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision, and therefore agree that the appeal should be denied.
Ms. Zahn.
Yes, I also thank all the parties for the amount of time they spent working on this. This is a very large amount of records, and the role that we take on here is different than our regular role of being quasi-judicial and looking at the closed record. After taking the time to look through and review all of the records independently, I also concur with the comments of the mayor and Councilmember Lee that there is material and substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision, and therefore agree that the appeal should be denied.
Thank you. We now need to provide direction to city staff to prepare an ordinance. Mr. Stokes.
Yes, I certainly agree with all the comments that have been made by my colleagues and join the comments of the mayor and Councilmember Lee in this. And I would move to deny the appeals of the hearing examiner's decision to approve PSC's application for a conditional use permit for the South Bellevue segment of the Energize Eastside project, and to direct the city attorney's office to draft an ordinance denying the appeals, incorporating and adopting the findings of fact and conclusions of law from the hearing examiner's decision, and approving the conditional use permit as approved by the hearing examiner.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to provide that direction to the city attorney's office. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries on a 6-0 vote. That will come back to us on December 2nd, I believe, as I'm having trouble with my dates
That's
these
correct.
days. So that will come back to us on December 2nd for action. That will be separate action. We will take a vote on that as well. We currently are still under the quasi-judicial proceedings, so we cannot have interaction. You won't see us talking to the press about this. That will certainly go through, actually, perhaps Ms. Gerla, could you give us just a little information on how long this goes and the restrictions on council?
Right, because you are still in the middle of this proceeding, you cannot have ex parte, communications with anyone about this, and nor with the press, and it remains to be seen after the council's decision whether this proceeding will continue on in the court system. It may, and so during the pendency of this proceeding, the council members will not be able to talk to parties about your decision or about the case. There's the possibility it could eventually get remanded back. That I'm not saying it will, but because there's always the possibility that could happen, you cannot continue to have, or cannot have, ex parte communications with parties about this case.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, can I add one more quick comment?
Not a comment. You can ask a question.
Well, just a quick comment. How's that? That's no, just a quick comment. Now, since we have taken the action, I want to express the sentiment everybody has. You did, and other council members. We want to sincerely thank all the people, appellant and everybody else who have worked so hard and put so much energy into such a subject that's dear to everybody. What's affecting the community. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. There is no other business to come before the City Council tonight. We are adjourned.